Okay, well, so first I thought we would listen to my fabulous paper that I wrote talking about the work. But then I decided, actually, I think we should move first because I wanted to do a 15-minute experiential just to give you a sense of what the work is. And then rather than just coming from a conceptual place, you'll have a little bit of that in your body. And then I can read my fabulous paper. And then my students, 3 of them, Grace and Ellie and Lindsay, said that they would actually show some of their work, and I also hope that they'll talk some. So, okay, this thing seems silly. Okay, you don't really need that, do you? Okay, can everybody stand up? Actually, no, this is not true. If you would prefer to stay seated, if that's how you're comfortable, that's fine. But I invite you to stand as a place to begin. Okay? And we can kind of be in a horseshoe formation or circular. I don't know, but if the video, is that a problem if we're in a circle? No? Okay, great. Okay. So I'll just do 15 minutes. So what I would like for you to do to begin is to just bring one hand to your heart center and one hand to your lower abdomen. And I like to begin this way to give us an opportunity to just come in touch with our life force. Both the breathing, the rise and fall of the breath, and then the pulsing of your heart. And I like to take the time also to move into the practice with a sense of gratitude, both for the opportunity to be here and also to work with this wonderful organism that we've been given. So gradually, if you will, and you can either work with your eyes open or closed, just begin to shift the weight. You can actually take a fairly wide stance in the legs, soft knees, soft ankles, soft hips. Just let yourself very gently shift the weight from side to side. As you do that, waking up the nerve endings and the soles of your feet, coming in contact with the floor. Making contact with your breath. And as you're shifting the weight, just bringing some attention to the soles of your feet, noticing if you're on the inside of your foot, you're rolling to the outside, going from one to the other as you shift your weight. Just bringing your sensations, your awareness to that place of contact on the floor. And just allow yourself to enjoy that gentle shifting of weight, just like you're on a gently rocking boat. So you work at your own tempo, just finding the rhythm that works for you. And then I invite you to bend your knees maybe a little bit more, kind of rock your pelvis. your interpretation. Trying to let that movement travel all the way from the tail up through the top of the head as you shift the weight. Bringing this side-to-side movement into the spine, originating at the pelvis. Good. Stay with the breath, stay with your sensations. If you feel like you want to grow the movement, let the movement grow. If you feel like it needs to be smaller, whatever feels right in your body. And if you can, just keep that rock going, that shifting of weight. You can also take one foot off the floor a little bit more, take a little bit more rock. If you can try and image the side-to-side or lateral movement. And then gradually let your hands move away from your body. Just being aware of the space in between your hands and your body, the energy in between. And the embrace of the space. I like to think about the space as being alive, so that kind of aliveness within the embrace. And gradually let the arms open a little bit more to take in the room, the space. Just letting your arms move as they want to in relationship to the rocking. You're going to stay with the rocking a little bit longer. Just trying to drop into that. And there's kind of a satisfaction that happens from repetitive movement. And then gradually, if you will, just bring this rocking side to side, smaller and smaller until the weight is basically evenly distributed on both your feet. Trying to, though, keep your inner senses alive, creating space from the inside, inner enlightenment. And then we're going to take this spine of ours and move in the sagittal plane. So that's the forward, back, up, and down. And again, you just follow the sequence of your spinal movement. It can be as big or as small as you would like, staying with the breath. Letting the movement of the arms follow the movement that originates in the spine. And right now, I was thinking also about the delicacy of the movement, or sensing the delicacy of the movement. I call this delicate place kind of moving at the caress level. which is a major component to the practice. And that fluency engages the articulation from the inside out. And you'll notice that there's a relationship at the top of the head and the tail. So it's referred to as head-tail movement. It's kind of a natural developmental movement. Just let the knees be soft. Good, and maybe just a little bit longer in this forward, back, and down. Dropping into your sensations. Just finding that as you continue with the movement, the enlivenment of the internal space. Maybe heat building. That's not too difficult to feel in this room right now. Good. And then if you will, just bring that action subtly and slowly to a close. So you're coming back to the weight on both your feet, but also very enlivened. And then we'll just move a little bit in rotation. And so if you have a back issue at all, just be careful in the rotation in terms of how far you rotate side to side. Just moving at the caress level. Here's where I'd like to invite you also to just play with your eyes. And let your eyes follow the movement that starts from the tail. You can work with eyes open, eyes closed. And then you can play a little bit and let the eyes lead you. And just notice how that changes your movement, your perception. Beautiful. And then from this place, in the class I would do, we would go longer. Now I'm asking you, or inviting you, if you will, to kind of meld all of those different movements of the spine together. So letting your spine become fluid, bringing in the sagittal and lateral and the rotation. And again, letting the arms just kind of move in relationship to the spine. That's not always the way it works, but for now, letting the expression come from the initiation of your center. Again, play with eyes open and closed. This has sort of become a real question for me. They inform you differently. And either way has its place. Feel free these different ways to move the spine. Just thinking about the different parts of the torso, the ribs, moving separate from the hips. I like to also use my hands. I encourage people to use their hands as a little tactile aid. You can use them as a reference point to push into and move to or away from. Remembering that the ribs are also in the back body. The hands lately, besides a tactile aid, little provocateurs. So contacting your body and creating a response. Just bring some more movement into your hips. Again, finding all the different planes, kind of bringing them together at this very gentle caress level. The idea is to try and find new movement in the body. It can be very subtle. Trying to release us from holding patterns. And finding new possibilities. Move around in a kind of concentric circle around yourself, and seeing the space, aware of other people in the space, changing your levels. Just before we go, just to give you another little taste, now I'm going to ask you to go a little bit deeper than the caress. Think about more of a rubbing as a kind of shift in effort. Imagine you're rubbing your arms against something, your ribs against something. Top of the head against something. Maybe we should just keep doing this. Okay, and then from here, let's just take a little kind of vibratory releasing. alive in state, if you would. I can be a little bit more formal and kind of talk about how I understand all this. Okay? Feel free to stand if you'd rather stand. Actually, I was going to talk extemporaneously, but I don't trust myself to say everything I wanted to say, so I wrote paper. So bear with me. Sit or stand or lie on the floor, whatever you'd rather. Okay. Okay, and actually, I think I did that since a little bit more Okay. You want to have some cookies to munch on first? Okay. Shall I start my thing? Okay, here we go. So how do you all feel, by the way? Okay. All right. So, So I would like to begin by acknowledging and thanking both the Frederick P. Lenz Foundation for Buddhist Studies and Naropa University for the opportunity to fully engage in MESA research this spring. It has been a privilege to do so. I want to thank my 5 students whose participation and commitment to the project have been invaluable. I also need to acknowledge and thank all of my teachers whose work lives deeply within me and is the foundation from which MESA has arisen. There are 2 forms in particular that have had a huge influence on the development of MESA, and they are Gaga and authentic movement, respectively. Merging my interpretation of these 2 forms became the starting point for MESA. When I created the proposal for the MESA project, I entertained a vision of where the work might lead. I had been introducing components of it in various classes at Gustavus Adolphus College, my home institution, but had not been able to develop the structure the way I envisioned it. Having the time and support this semester, plus a laboratory studio complete with a small but wonderful group of students, have permitted me to truly delve into the form, enabling my conceptual vision to transform into an actual practice. While I believe I'm in the formative stages of the work with much to hone and clarify, I've taken a huge leap in understanding. The students who committed themselves to being present with me on this journey also took a huge leap into the unknown. Their reflections verbally and written and responses in movement creation have been instrumental in leading me into the development of MESA and its future refinement. Now to the question, what is MESA? Movement, exploration, imagination, sensation, awareness. I want to begin my explanation by quoting Deborah Hay, a well-known dance innovator and choreographer that I admire. She says, quote, "My research happens in the experiential realm. Dancing, standing on 2 feet, moving, listening, and seeing. Unrecognized is the altar that rises with us in the morning and leads us to rest at night. My body, my dancing is formed and sustained imaginatively. I reconfigure the 3-dimensional body into an immeasurable 53 trillion cells perceiving all of them at once. Impossibly whole and ridiculous to presume, I remain in attendance to the feedback." Deborah Hay captures exquisitely how I understand and practice the embodied research I have called MESA, which is a developing somatic practice form. It is truly an amalgam of my life's experience in movement, including dance, teaching, choreography, injury, rehabilitation, somatic, contemplative practice, and aging. Ooh, that aging thing.
The research in Mesa has evolved out of a questing to know, live, and move deeply in the weight of my bones and being, stepping away from the relentless tempo of contemporary rhythms. It has become a way to literally move into a compassionate state, accepting my frailties and limitations, giving myself permission to see what is and to embody it. Mesa invites curiosity into kinesthetic embodied presence through movement meditation. The practice seeks to enliven the inner space and awaken the creative impulse. Part of the discipline is to try and cultivate an attitude of acceptance. Following the kinesthetic thread allows one's inherent creativity to manifest as embodied expression. Movement patterns are revealed, and the release of those patterns are cultivated through attentive, sustained investigation over a 45 to 50-minute time period. Karen McHose wrote, quote, "Moving and attending in a mood of simple curiosity allows the body's habits to release." Locating oneself in their own organism or inner space and simultaneously locating oneself in outer space is the invitation that Mesa offers. I've been calling it locating, and I realized when we began I forgot to say, please locate yourself. But that's the idea, is to try and locate yourself. The sensory movement research is meant to lead one to their place of location, yet that might also be the place where one begins. Sometimes we can drop into locating ourselves with ease, while other times we need some coaxing to help us arrive. As a teacher facilitator, it is my charge to, quote, rehabilitate the imagination in areas of fixation, unquote, as stated by Hubert Goddard. When there is difficulty in locating oneself for whatever reason, I borrow the phrase, fake it till you make it. By committing oneself to a particular time and space, a mover is saying yes to the generative possibilities and engaging with the potential of the intuitive voice to lead one further into the creative realm. Often that is all one needs to let delight in the kinesthetic experience to take hold. Imagination and sensation work in conjunction with each other. Sometimes feeling and perceiving can lead to arising images. Conversely, images can lead to increased sensation and create a window that may enable us to access and understand what was previously dormant. Imagination and sensation feed and inform each other. When we perceive, we are creating something in our minds and thus engaging our imagination. I have created a scaffolded structure that presently defines Mesa. I believe it informs the mover on multiple levels. And this is how the structure unfolds. So there's the 45-minute or 50-minute guided embodied research, which you just had a little taste of, that is meant to awaken the kinesthetic and proprioceptive senses. Creativity unfolds through the exploration by generating movement and bringing it to form. It may be new, having been inaccessible before, or a deepening of previous experience is felt. The body is the reservoir of our life experience, inviting us to engage with curiosity and presence. As the exploration comes to a close, the experience resonates, and time is then given to process the material through writing, drawing, or just being with the sensations. The second tier invites the mover to distill the essence of their movement experience or recreate it through what I have termed kinesthetic remapping. I have to say also just this, that there are certain terms I'm using, and as I was trying to explain to some people I've been speaking with, that I don't know if I'm borrowing these terms or if I'm coming up with them, because 50 years of dancing, I don't know what's original. So I'm saying kinesthetic mapping. I hope I'm not taking that term and abusing it, that somebody else has been using it. So anyway. The kinesthetic remapping is akin to developing an internal witness. In the remembering, the movers are bringing a consciousness to the material while simultaneously integrating it. New movement may also unfold. The students move and perform their remapping before an external witness. One student wrote, quote, "If I simply set the intention in the space of my mind, my body pleasantly surprises me in effortlessly calling up previous movements that were profound for me and even expanding upon these new patterns of discovery." In the third tier, reacquainting with the movement experience goes one step further in engaging the intellectual, analytical, and intuitive processes of dance making. Here, the students are asked to choreograph a movement study that goes beyond the improvisational. One takes the material another step further into the forming process, organizing it, structuring it, developing a cohesive entity. It potentially becomes a gem or a haiku of sorts, capturing the essence of the entire gestalt. The challenge is to shape the sourced raw material into form by making decisions about how to structure, connect, and organize the threads. As the movement has arisen in connections with one's natural creativity, it becomes an offering to the witness who receives the work with compassionate non-judgment. Over time, as the first part of the discipline deepens, I believe the necessity to move through this sensory exploration gradually insinuates itself within. Consistent practice beckons. What unfolds has potency and may indeed provide a complete experience for the practitioner with no other development needed, as expression and movement is without question absolutely life-affirming. However, when the generated material is revisited through the kinesthetic remapping before an external witness, another type of profound experience unfolds. The alchemy of change is catalyzed in the sharing and being seen by another. So what I have discovered. In the beginning, I imagined the directed movement exploration would have the most potency because of its rawness and previously unexplored territory. I presumed that having the opportunity to process and edit before being witnessed would minimize that raw. In hindsight, I realized my naivete in making that presumption. In fact, what I have learned is that the mover is potentially more vulnerable moving with a witness regardless of the processing that has transpired. In the first tier of Mesa, everybody practices together, so there is a level playing field. Everyone is engaged in what I'm calling the raw. The moment a witness is introduced, the tenor of the experience changes. Vulnerability becomes heightened no matter how much permission is given to selectively edit previous to sharing. I underestimated the power of the exchange between mover and witness in Mesa, even though I experienced it many times in authentic movement. This is where another transformative process takes place. The sweetest nectar in this practice form seems to be in the sharing before a witness where the offering is graciously received. As one student writes, quote, "With the presence of a witness, I'm actively collaborating with her to create this moment. I have this impression that I'm telling a very vulnerable story and sharing with others through the expression of my body." Another student writes, quote, "The witnessing more simply acts as a cushion for me, as a definer of space that I'm given permission to occupy. As a mover, the presence of the witness is almost a certain compeller into presence of the mover. The witness becomes the ultimate witness, and the mover is free to investigate with an extra pair of eyes to protect and hold." A third student states, quote, "If I do not bring my whole self into the present moment, then do others in the world meet me with incomplete energy? This is why experiencing being witnessed is so valuable." End quote. So thoughts and confusions about Mesa at this point. I wrote eyes open or closed, which I mentioned when we were doing the practice. Eyes open informs the mover of what is happening in the space. Even if a mover is given permission to find the movement in their own body, the visual informs everyone respectively and displays to the mover what to explore within a certain framework, especially if the teacher is also participating. This was my experience in Gaga, where the rule is that eyes must be opened. Eyes open keeps the experience somewhat more organized. When movers work with their eyes closed as an authentic movement, visual external stimuli is kept to a minimum, which allows the mover to more readily drop into themselves. When allowing the students to work with eyes closed, I have to let go of my expectations of what the explorations might look like. It is a far more disorganized room when eyes are closed, and there is no visual information that frames the research. Eyes closed permits more diversity in the interpretation of directives. Although the energy between movers is palpable, one is not pulled into a collective style or a language because the visual reference is not there. At this point, I do not adhere to one specifically or the other because I see the value of working with both the eyes open and closed. I feel at this point there should be no rule because there are times when either might be the authentic response to the moment. Leaving the decision to the mover empowers them to have agency. The challenge is to make the choice consciously rather than drifting into one or the other. There are times when I will ask more specifically for eyes open or closed, but at this point I'm not very demanding about it. When I first taught the introduction to Mesa in January, I had a vision of what the movement explorations might look like because of my own experience in them. I was definitely influenced by recent and continued studies in Gaga and the movement language that develops from that practice. However, over time, the research has taken on a completely different character, deviating much from Gaga. I felt compelled to follow what I perceived to be the needs of the students, and I'm slowly letting go of any image of what the work might look like. which has been both exciting but terrifying. I continued to bring attention to concepts such as spinal fluency, which you experienced, interior enlivenment, traveling movement in the body, presence through the inner-outer exchange, distinction of energy qualities, and yet I've had to work at letting go of preconceived image of the practice. I will share with you an excerpt of something I wrote in the beginning of March when some questions and confusions arose with some of the students. I wrote, quote, "Initially I envisioned that there would be a duet, if you will, between my directives, with each of you interpreting them as you would, staying with them to a certain degree, while following the thread of your kinesthetic experience simultaneously. I do think there is discipline in that, and yet I do not want you to feel inhibited to the point where you feel you hit a wall because my directives are not working for you. I accept that. So yes, follow your kinesthetic impulses using my directives as an initial catalyst. If you feel unresponsive to my directives, go where your body takes you. Ultimately, this is one of the important facets of Mesa. I'm giving directives to try to lead you to a place of possible discovery, and I support you to go there, wherever there is, rather than reflexively reacting or dropping out of the exploration. It is most important to me that you move with a spirit of curiosity, maintain presence, awareness, and commit to a sustained practice." When the above confusions arose, I had a true loss of confidence and I felt somewhat shaken. I asked the students for honest feedback, and upon receiving it, I lost my equilibrium. In another email to the students, I confessed to that loss. Rather than simply allowing you, this is what I wrote to the students, sorry, rather than simply allowing you all to have your truths and challenges as part of the research, I took them on unconsciously in some fashion. It is confusing for me to separate individual processes and the process of Mesa. How do I hear your responses, acknowledge and honor them without losing sight of my objectives? It's really a difficult challenge because I want the work to speak to everyone, and yet I know that it might not. After much imposed suffering, I concluded that research is meant to provoke, which indeed it did, and loss of confidence is part of that process. Accepting that has enabled me to carry on. At this time, I'm going to stop reading my paper. But I have one final quote because I think it's a really amazing quote. This is again by Hubert Goddard. So he says, quote, "Like Ulysses returned to his native island, the body movement that belongs exclusively to each of us must be invented through 1,000 ruses in order to deal with the obstacles and the mirages that separate us from our goal. But this also extends to Penelope, who did not hesitate to untie her weaving every day. We must undo our perceptions and coordinations daily to extend the moment of possibility and allow again the new gesture to come." Thank you. Thank you for sitting through that. So now what I would like to do is to have the students show their work, and then maybe we can have a little bit discussion afterwards. So that those works are more formalized studies, so it's kind of the third step in the tier. Is that true? Yes? You're doing your formalized studies? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay. Oop. Sorry, I completely forgot about that. Hold on, Grace, because I just messed something up. No? I'm okay? Okay.
I mean, I think, and actually we had a discussion about this because there was a question in my mind whether the first two tiers were really where the work was at and that was important. And it was so rich what was happening with the witness experience without bringing it to the third level that I had this moment like, oh, but I really want to go there. And so in the end, after discussion, I decided that I still wanted to do the third level, which was formalizing the movement and really making a composition of it. And I think largely because of my own experience, while I love to improvise, I've had the most learning personally in crafting that raw material and wrestling with it in that way. So that's my attachment to those three levels.
Can I ask the dancers?
Yeah, please do.
I wanted to know.
I'd rather them speak.
I wanted to know if there's any inspiration behind each of your pieces, or if it was just like over time those movements came together. Where did it come from?
Mine, I found this semester in our movement practice and being witnessed, that I was wrestling with this question of sensuality and appropriateness, and especially being witnessed in that. And so my study is from that question.
Yeah, well, the first movement with this was just discovered on Tuesday in our class. So, and it felt like some of my movements had been taken from other movement studies that I had done, and sort of just like, also I felt like this energy of sort of really, well, it's very new for me to be witnessed in general dancing, and so, and then sort of also stepping in and embodying this like warrior energy in my movements, and even like making the sounds, like I didn't even really know I was gonna do that. So it just shows me that like my creative process is very like in the moment and like spontaneous. And so there's like, yeah, again, that balance of like spontaneity and then creating something more formalized. But yeah, that's my experience. Thanks for your question.
Yeah. Yeah.
First, I want to give voice to something that was kind of happening for me as witness. It is me sitting here witnessing all of your movements. I found myself, it's almost like my body was reacting to what I was seeing, and like even bring my awareness to when I saw at some point in pretty much all of your dances, the flexion of the toes, and I found my feet like following. There was something was alive in me and witnessing. It was very beautiful and intense. And so I'm struck by this study of the choreographed movements and how does that blend in, and you spoke a little bit to it just during the last question. Grace, I believe your name was there. And I'm curious because I practice a lot of spontaneous movement, and so I'm wondering what your journeys have been like in terms of choreographing something and staying with those movements over time, and if there's some kind of deepening or if there's flexibility in places you didn't expect, or if you find meaning or again that depth in a certain movement that wasn't initially there for you.
I do a lot of like moving spontaneously too. This is my first real experience with choreographing, and so finding that my spontaneous movements like tell this deep story of like what's really going on with me, and as I what's really going on, but like what's inside, and how by putting more attention and focus on that through like sort of keeping the repetitiveness, the story does like deepen, or my connection to my inner just deepens, and happening, so it's so hard to process it right now, but it's a really, really vulnerable sharing for sure.
Yeah, we haven't had a mirror in our room that we practiced. And I come from choreographing is not like this before. And I'm not seeing myself
intrigued to participate, and I've been like saying like I need to dance, I'm craving something, but just haven't found that kind of thing, and I'm wondering like, yeah, just what your dreams are.
I don't really know at this point. I mean, certainly I will bring it back to my students where I teach, and try to create a space to do the different tiers. But also, I mean, part of my sabbatical proposal was that I would bring it back to the community. So I'm wanting to work outside the kind of privileged environment of the college
Yeah.
and bring it more into the community setting. So that's the idea. I have worked with a lot of different populations before, but not in this more contemplative fashion. And so that's kind of a goal that I have. But I don't know yet how that's going to manifest. But I'm so glad that you're interested. Maybe I'll come back to Boulder and do a workshop.
Yeah. Where are you based out of?
Minnesota.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I have a curiosity along those same lines. I'm curious about something I just totally made up, and I don't know if this is something that someone else also made up, is like if there's a collective cultural movement mind. And I'd be curious to see if Mesa was taken to different cultures or different countries, the kind of movements that it would inspire would reflect some kind of collective cultural movement mind that's there. And I wonder, because you mentioned bringing it out of the privileged population of college and even subcultures within our own country. But how cool it would be to study the kind of trends in different cultures and just, there could be nothing, or it could be too diverse to matter.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole, like I said, I mean, what I believe is a formative stage. I mean, I might be falling over by the time the form comes to its fruition. I don't know, but I'm just going to keep going with the flow. I think it's just a lifetime investigation, and so this really gave me an opportunity to formalize it a little bit more. And now I just have to, kind of navigate through them. So I don't know. A lot of things can unfold. But thank you for that idea. I mean, I think for me, what's really interesting is that like I said in the paper, that I had this vision because I've been so influenced by my recent experiences in Gaga, and that has a very particular look. And for those of you that don't know, Gaga is a form that's arisen out of Israel, and Bache the dance, and Ohad Naharan, who's the artistic director and choreographer for Bache in Tel Aviv. And the language is like gone like this throughout the world. So there's a growing up a little bit.
Well, I so badly